Naseem Hamed had one of the most controversial styles and personalities ever in boxing. I have made this video for newer fans to appreciate why he was such a sensation. Hamed started boxing at 7 years old and had his first amateur bout when he was 11. He compiled a record of 62-5 as an amateur before having his first professional bout on 14th of April 1992. Coming into the bout, Hamed is a heavily favoured prospect against Beard, who has a record of 2 wins, 6 losses and 1 draw. The fight itself will in a microcosm be the first of several entertaining slugfests that Hamed will be involved in during his career. Early in the first round, Beard lands a hard right hand that snaps Hamed's head back. Hamed comes roaring back with punches of his own. He shows off his awesome punching power in the second round, stopping Beard with a body shot. Through his next 10 bouts, he will reel off an impressive 10 victories. However, these victories will come against lowly regarded opposition. 9 out of the 11 opponents have more wins than losses, and their combined record is 116 wins to 198 losses. On 11th of May 1994, he will step up significantly in class when he takes on Vincenzo Belcastro for a version of the European Super Bantamweight title. Hamed gets off to a great start, dropping Belcastro with a right hook straight left hand combo. This was the first knockdown of Belcastro's career despite having challenged for a world title, and he looks to be on very wobbly legs as he gets back to his feet. Hamed makes no particular effort to finish Belcastro. At the time, commentators will see this as a statement of Hamed's arrogance/confidence, as he wanted more opportunity to clown on Belcastro. Through the middle rounds, Hamed dominates Belcastro with his elusive style. In the late rounds, things take a turn for the bizarre as he humiliates Belcastro. Hugh McIlvaney, writing for the London Sunday Times, would write in the wake of the fight that Hamed, I quote, had an eagerness to treat his demoralised victim as if he were no better than something you might wipe off your shoe. Hamed will again drop Belcastro in the 11th round before spending most of the rest of the fight clowning. After beating Belcastro, Hamed will rack up another 7 wins against a decent class of opposition before going into a world title challenge against Steve Robinson. Steve Robinson didn't have the most impressive professional boxing record on paper going into the fight. He had in fact though turned things around significantly after a bad start. At the time of the bout, he was ranked number 3 in the world in the featherweight division by The Ring magazine, and he held the WBO world title. When the action begins, Hamed looks very relaxed, carrying a loose guard. Robinson seems to go completely the other way, keeping a very tight guard and looking very tense. Hamed has success leaning away from punches and landing right hooks to the body. Midway through the second round, Hamed starts some outrageous tomfoolery, abandoning his hands to his waist and standing completely square on facing Robinson. Towards the end of the second round, Hamed lands a big right uppercut that staggers Robinson. Through the third and fourth rounds, Hamed continues to dominate and humiliate Robinson. As a spectator, I genuinely have no idea if Hamed is looking to establish himself as the sort of number 1, most preeminent mystical kung fu master in boxing, or if he is focused on humiliating Robinson for having the impertinence of thinking he could beat him. To put the performance in perspective, I think a good parallel to draw would be Hamed's performance against Robinson compared to Floyd Mayweather's tactics that he used against Conor McGregor. It's hard to say exactly where McGregor would be ranked if he got active at light middleweight, but I think it's safe to say he won't be ranked in the top 10 in his weight class by The Ring magazine. One guy in Hamed breaks every rule in the book and barely gets hit. The other guy waits for a grossly overmatched opponent to gas before going in for the finish. Hamed drops Robinson in the 5th round when a counter left hand leads into a combo. He eventually finishes a thoroughly battered Robinson in the 8th round with a leaping left hook. Following the Robinson drubbing, he will return to action against Syed Lawal, who had a record of 17 1-on-1 going into the bout, but was ranked outside the top 10 in the weight class. The fight will be a mismatch, with Hamed stopping Lawal in 35 seconds. Off the back of his good form, particularly against Robinson, Hamed will next make his US television debut on Showtime against Daniel Elisea, entering on a magic carpet. In the first round of the fight, Elisea lands a straight right hand on an off-balance Hamed. 2 more follow-up right hands sent Hamed to the canvas. Hamed isn't badly hurt, but by the time of the 3rd right hand he had regained his balance, and the force of the right hand did seem to buckle his legs to some degree. Hamed will respond by dropping Elisea with an overhand right-left uppercut combo in the next round. A right-left-right combo later in the round crushes Elisea to the canvas. the end result is an emphatic knockout win for Hamed. The next outing for Hamed will be against Mexican Manuel Medina. Medina is a well-known name in boxing circles as he has fought extensively at or near the top level. When you look at his career, he was ranked number 2 in the weight class by The Ring in 1991. Then he was ranked as high as 4th, 5th if you factor in The Ring when naming champions in a division in 2003. There's a 12-year stretch where he is ranked near the top of the weight class. There are plenty of other champions who might have had a shorter, more intense peak, but can't match Medina for longevity. Coming into this bout, he is ranked 3rd by The Ring magazine in the weight class. Medina is 25 at the time of the bout, and likely to be sharp for this bout against Hamed, who is already a star and giving all of his opponents the biggest purse of their career from here on. Coming into the bout, Medina is known as having good boxing skills and a very strong chin. He is criminally underpowered though, and a very tepid finisher, repeatedly going the distance with opponents who have as many as 20 knockout losses on their record in tune-up fights. Early in the fight, Hamed lands a left-hand bomb that drops Medina. Medina gets back to his feet looking very wobbly. In the 3rd round, Medina comes back. He moves his head well and lands more punches than Hamed. In the 4th round, Medina lands a right hand that appears to hurt Hamed. He lands another later in the round. In the 5th round, Hamed again tries to land bombs whilst Medina remains elusive. To begin the 6th round, Medina, who has won the last 3 rounds in a row and is seeming to take over, taunts Hamed back himself. In the 7th round, Hamed abandons the attempt to employ hit and don't get hit style and elects to trade with Medina. In the 8th round, Medina lands a vicious looking right hand. Hamed leers and shrugs it off, but it was a big shot. At the end of the 8th round, Medina lands a right hand that sends Hamed's gum shield flying. As Hamed dances off, his legs betray him. In the 9th round, against the flow of the fight, Hamed lands a right hand that floors Medina. Later in the round, a short counter right hand again puts Medina down. Medina survives through the 10th. Towards the end of the 11th, Hamed is once again throwing reckless bombs, but this time they are landing. Medina's corner will retire him at the end of the 11th. In the wake of the fight, Hamed will say he fought with a heavy cold. I'm a bit skeptical of this. I'm more inclined to think that Medina was underrated going into the fight, and Hamed had fallen in love with his power too much, trying to land one big bomb instead of setting it up. The most bizarre aspect of the fight is that Hamed appeared to reverse Medina's strengths and weaknesses, making him almost look like a decent puncher who could dish it out without taking it. Hamed will return to action with a win over Amigo Molina before coming into a bout with Tom Johnson. Johnson came into the bout with Hamed off the back of 18 wins, 12 straight title defences, and having been ranked as the number 1 in the weight class for over 2 years since Alejandro Gonzalez upset Kevin Kelly in early '95. There is bad blood coming into the fight, with Hamed being accused of racial slurs. Early in the 1st round, Hamed lobs a left hook from way on the outside that catches and staggers Johnson. For most of the 2nd round, the fighters cancel each other out. In the 3rd round, Hamed lands a hard right hand. He unloads on Johnson on the ropes looking for the finish. Johnson's leg starts to buckle as Hamed unloads. A counter right hand from Johnson floors Hamed at the end of the round. It's a legitimate knockdown, but the ref doesn't call it, presumably because Hamed had been so dominant in the round. Early in the 4th round, a very wobbly Johnson clinches with Hamed and bundles him to the floor. Hamed dominates through the 4th and 5th. In the 6th round, Johnson lands 2 right hands, the second snaps Hamed's head back. Hamed wobbles Johnson again at the end of the 7th round. Hamed eventually ends the fight in the 8th round with a big uppercut for the biggest win of Hamed's career up to this point. Hamed will return to action a few months later against Billy Hardy, who had been a world title challenger at one point in his career, albeit 2 at weight divisions lower south at bantamweight. Hamed predicts he will stop Hardy in the 1st round, and he makes good of his promise. After stopping a hugely overmatched Juan Cabrera in 2 rounds, his next fight would be against Jose Badillo. Early in the bout, Hamed dominates with his jab. He mixes it up, landing a long right uppercut. Hamed continues to dominate from the early to the mid rounds. He starts some outrageous taunting of Badillo, who just can't land a meaningful glove on him. Badillo's corner eventually throw the towel in the 7th round. Many find the bout a bit distasteful because of Hamed's clowning, but his display of boxing skill can't be denied. Having made his US TV debut already on Showtime against Daniel Alessea, in late December 1997, Hamed will make his first appearance on American soil against Kevin Kelly. Kelly had been the star of the featherweight division a few years earlier, albeit nowhere near the same degree as Hamed's, holding the WBC featherweight belt. He was also ranked number 1 in the weight class, and he made it onto the ring's pound for pound rankings at the lower end. When the action begins, Hamed initially has success. He slips Kelly's punches and beats him to the punch, landing jabs. Towards the end of the first round, Hamed makes a huge mistake. He leans back on the inside, but he's not close to being out of range, and Kelly lands a right hook that floors Hamed. Aside from one huge mistake though, Hamed has won the majority of the rounds. To begin the second round, Kelly begins to find his range. He lands a powerful right jab on an again off balance Hamed, and he touches his gloves to the canvas to regain balance. It's the second knockdown in the first 2 rounds against Hamed. Hamed returns fire later in the rounds, landing a straight right hand that floors Kelly. Through the third round, Kelly scores with jabs against a cautious Hamed. Towards the end of the round, he lands a left uppercut and powerful right jab. At the beginning of the fourth round, Kelly gets involved in some short range exchanges. Hamed catches Kelly with a left hook and then a straight left hand. Kelly goes down like a sack of potatoes. Kelly beats the count and the action resumes. Hamed goes in for the finish. As Hamed tries to finish, Kelly lands a counter punch that the referee harshly calls a knockdown. Buoyed by the knockdown call, Kelly goes in for the finish despite having taken vastly more punishment in the round. A counter overhand left from Hamed finally puts Kelly down for a third time. Kelly gets up right on the 10 count, but the referee calls the fight. Hamed will return to action 4 months later against Wilfredo Vasquez. The fight was originally due to be for the unification of the WBO and WBA featherweight titles. Bear in mind, Hamed has also won the IBF title against Tom Johnson before relinquishing it. 1 week before the fight, the WBA will strip Vasquez of the WBA featherweight title. The fight itself will be a one-sided affair, with Hamed scoring 4 official knockdowns on the scorecards. There was controversy with one due to Hamed's foot affecting Vasquez's balance. The referee will step in the 7th, and off the back of such a performance, it's hard to argue against Hamed being the number 1 in the weight class. In his next fight, Hamed will take on former Olympic silver medalist Wayne McCullough. It's a grudge match which had been years in the making, but the prospective matchup lost a significant amount of steam when McCullough was upset by 39-year-old veteran Daniel Zaragoza. In the first round, Hamed initially opens up, landing punches that McCullough takes. As McCullough presses, Hamed backs off, circling. The first round goes to Hamed. In the second round, McCullough lands solid punches. The third round is the round where Hamed predicted he would finish McCullough. Hamed lands 2 hard left hands early in the round that McCullough takes. He follows up with more punches and wins the round in a big way, but McCullough was never wobbled and celebrates surviving the round as he goes back to his corner. McCullough begins the fourth round by landing a right hand. Hamed tries to play it off by staring at the crowd. Through the fourth round, both fighters land solid shots. McCullough begins the fifth round by landing a stiff jab. In the sixth round, Hamed lands some counter left uppercuts, but McCullough again appears unfazed by Hamed's power. In the seventh round, Hamed begins dancing as he continues without landing much offense. Raucous boos fill the arena. In the late rounds, Hamed operates on the back foot, landing solid punches. McCullough presses and occasionally lands punches himself. In the 10th round, Hamed lands a left hand that staggers McCullough. Generally though, McCullough has taken the majority of Hamed's punches unfazed. The fight goes to a decision, with Hamed being declared a winner, but the fight has shown for the first time that Hamed's power isn't always completely devastating. Off the back of his performances in 1998, Hamed will end the year in the pound for pound top 10. Coming into his next bout, Hamed will permanently split with his trainer Brendan Ingle, replacing him with the duo of Oscar Suarez and Manny Stewart. His opponent will be former Olympian Paul Ingle. Ingle had been an Olympian and is a soon-to-be IBF featherweight champion, although lacking in experience. In the first round, Hamed shows his quality, slipping under an Ingle right hand before landing a left hook to the body and immediately following up with a left hook to the head. As Hamed dominates the first half of the fight, a left hook to the body from him again puts Ingle down in the 6th round. In the 8th round, Hamed starts to slow down. In the 9th and 10th rounds, Ingle comes on strong, repeatedly landing right hands as Hamed looks exhausted. Going into the 11th, it looks as if Hamed might not be able to go the distance. Against the flow of the action, a counter left hand from Hamed badly hurts Ingle, and the ref calls the fight. Hamed's next match will be to unify the WBO and WBC featherweight titles against Cesar Soto. Soto begins the first round trying to rough Hamed up, but a 5-punch combo from Hamed forces Soto to adopt a defensive posture. In the second round, Soto tries a unique move to counter Hamed's style. As Hamed leans back out of range, he steps forward changing stances and lands a left hook upstairs. Through the 3rd and 4th rounds, Hamed counters Soto effectively. Soto's punch output drops off significantly. He works his way inside and tries to wrestle rather than throw punches. As the fight becomes a wrestling match, Hamed has a rush of blood and body slams Soto to the mat. In the 8th round, Hamed breaks Soto's nose. The end result is a unanimous decision for Hamed, with both fighters being deducted points. In my opinion, Soto's tactics once he felt Hamed's power spoiled the action. On February 19, 2000, Marco Antonio Barrera and Eric Morales will meet in Las Vegas. Going into the fight, Morales is a big favourite, with Hamed citing a potential matchup between the two as his moment of destiny. Barrera comes out the gates guns blazing. Morales fires back, scorning his reach advantage and getting dragged into a war. Through the 8th, 9th and 10th rounds, Barrera slugs it out with Morales, dealing out massive amounts of punishment. At several stages, Morales looks as if he might go down. The final result is a Morales victory, but many believe he was defeated for the first time. There is now a less clear opponent for Hamed to establish himself as the undefeated number 1 in his weight range, with many now believing that Barrera might be his closest challenger. Hamed's next defense will come against former super bantamweight champion Vianney Bungu. Bungu had won the IBF super bantamweight title against Kennedy McKinney in a result that at the time seemed like a huge upset. Bungu's subsequent defences would show the result was as much a consequence of his improvement as it was a freak result. In the first round, a counter right hook from Hamed sends Bungu stumbling. Late in the first round, the fighters trade big punches. In the second round, Bungu's work rate drops off and Hamed lands big left hands. In the third round, a tentative Bungu banks up and Hamed tees off on the ropes. A huge left hand from Hamed floors Bungu in the 4th round, for the first stoppage loss of Bungu's career. There is some struggle to find Hamed's opponent for his next fight. Offers are made to Barrera, Morales, Juan Manuel Marquez and Johnny Tapia. Barrera and Morales will decline, saying it was too close to their war. Marquez had been avoided by Hamed for 2 years as the mandatory challenger for his WBO featherweight belt. Nevertheless, when the offer finally comes, he will decline the biggest payday of his career, stating, "Now they want the fight. I wasn't prepared. They did not give me sufficient time to get prepared. Hamed is difficult to fight. Hamed is like a wrestler. He will toss you around if he can. It is almost the same way with fighting Norwood. You have to knock him out to get the victory." One thing you can say in defense of Hamed is that he was never involved in a disputed decision in his career. Tapia will turn down the biggest purse of his career, presumably because he did not fancy his chances of facing Hamed at 126. Instead, Hamed will face Sanchez. Sanchez is the last man to defeat Floyd Mayweather, beating him in an amateur bout. It sounds good on paper, but he had been a pro flop up to this point, with a questionable chin. Going into the bout, Hamed is a huge favourite. In the second round of the fight, Sanchez surprises everyone by landing 2 right hands that put Hamed on the deck. The ref calls no knockdowns, saying there was a clash of feet, but the punches also bloody the nose of Hamed. Hamed fires back with a big left hook after some confusion. A straight left combo from Sanchez rocks Hamed again. To begin the third round, a combination of punches from Sanchez rock Hamed again as he uses the ropes to keep himself upright. Hamed fires back with some huge left hands. After a right hook from Hamed, Sanchez goes to his knees. The ref calls it a tangle, but it looks like Sanchez's legs are giving out. They trade big punches. A brutal combo from Hamed at the end of the fourth round will end the fight. Hamed will end the year 2000 as the 6th ranked pound for pound fighter in the world, one rank higher than Floyd Mayweather Jr. He will maintain this rank coming into his next bout with Marco Antonio Barrera. Going into the bout, in a poll of 30 boxing journalists writing for the biggest publications, Hamed will be picked by 28 of them, making him a massive favourite going into the Barrera fight. During the fight week and during the fight build-up, Barrera exudes intensity and focus. I can only think of a few other examples of a case where a fighter exudes such palpable focus. When the fight begins, Barrera keeps his distance and throws out jabs. A left hook to the body, left hook to the head combo from Barrera wobbles Hamed in the first round. Barrera ends the round having success circling left and doubling up on his jab. Barrera has success with his jab through the second round. Barrera takes Hamed down and digs his shoulder into his body in a tangle. A right hook, left hook combo from Hamed bloodies the nose of Barrera in the third round. A left hook from Barrera wobbles Hamed again early in the fourth round. Hamed makes an awkward pose at Barrera to end the fourth round as Manny Stewart tells him he's down 3-1 on points. In the sixth round, Hamed comes out orthodox. Barrera scores with the right hand. At the end of the sixth round, Hamed hits on the break, and ready for it, Barrera fires straight back. In the seventh round, Hamed lands his hardest left hand of the fight. Barrera responds by inviting him on. To begin the ninth round, Barrera slips a Hamed straight left and fires back with right, wobbling Hamed. In the ninth round, Hamed again hits on the break, and Barrera again fires back. Shortly after, Barrera lands a big left hook. Hamed responds by making a crazed face. In the 11th round, Barrera dominates Hamed, setting up punches behind his jab. Barrera continues to outbox Hamed through the 11th round. The fighters come to a clinch and Barrera rams Hamed's head into a turnbuckle, causing him a point deduction. The fight goes to a decision and Barrera is declared the winner. In the aftermath of the fight, Hamed's trainer Manny Stewart will say he only scored 2 or 3 rounds for Hamed. Hamed will fight once more a year later, employing a boxing-based strategy in winning a decision over lowly ranked Manuel Calvo. He will then become inactive and drift into a retirement. Critics will say he never recovered psychologically from the beating he received from Barrera, whilst the man himself will cite issues with his hands.